When the revamped XPS 13 came out earlier this year, I proudly proclaimed it a near-perfect laptop, and I still think it's the laptop most people should buy. But behind closed doors, Dell was working on the next evolution of XPS, and this is it, the XPS 13 2-in-1. And I think a lot of the small refinements that Dell has made to the formula really makes me feel like this is the next era of XPS, and that makes me really excited. If you're familiar with the XPS 13, you know what these laptops are famous for. So super thin bezels, it's the white carbon fiber weave in the palm rest, and of course great performance for a compact little laptop. But the design of the XPS 13 2-in-1 this year takes each of these things a step further, and it starts with those bezels. They're still just as tiny on the top and sides as before, but Dell has done something new with the bottom bezels, or the big chin that the XPS 13 used to have. It's been significantly cut down to the point where Dell couldn't even fit its logo on here, which is a nice bonus if you're anything like me and you don't really like that in-your-face branding anyways. Now the way they did that was by using what is called a reverse barrel hinge, which drops the screen slightly below the keyboard deck. It's not something you really notice when you open the laptop or anything like that, but it does cut down the effect of that bottom bezel significantly. And Dell didn't just cut that size out of the laptop completely, they actually added it back into the screen. So this is a 16:10 aspect ratio screen, which is a little bit taller than your average size 16:9 laptop. And just as a reference, this is the same aspect ratio that all MacBook products come in. And that's gonna be a theme you'll see throughout this review and throughout many of the different design choices Dell has made on the XPS 13 2-in-1. I really do find the size and the aspect ratio of the 16:10 screen to be near perfect. I spent a lot of time using the Surface Laptop 2 as my daily driver with its kind of boxy 3x2 shape, and I really started to like that and found it kind of weird going back to the 16:9. So I do think this is gonna be a great kind of happy medium between those two sizes. The only downside really is that you do get the letterboxing on the top and the bottom when you're watching videos, but I don't really think that's a huge deal. One caveat is that the webcam is still located up top and it's been fit into that tiny bezel still, but it's not an IR camera, so you can't use it for Windows Hello facial recognition. You'll have to rely on the fingerprint scanner that's located on the keyboard. Now, because Dell has gone with a 16:10 screen, this is a brand new panel that they're using on this laptop. And fortunately, it's actually a step up from a lot of the ones you'll see in other laptops. The one we've got here is a 1920 by 1200 resolution screen. You can, of course, go up to a 4K plus option, which is typically where you see the more accurate colors and the brighter screens, but this one here actually really impressed me. It goes over 500 nits in terms of brightness. It's really color accurate. And I think in terms of sharpness, this is as much as you need for a 13-inch laptop. I can even safely recommend this as a photographer's laptop because of those accurate colors, which isn't something I could necessarily say about the standard XPS 13. So those are all just improvements to the screen, but there's a lot more going on with this redesign of the XPS 13 2-in-1. Let's talk about materials for a second. This is the most metal we've seen in an XPS laptop before. And if you take a look at the sides, it has a nice shine to it, and you can see the machined aluminum going almost all the way up to the top of the sides of the device. Of course, the use of more metal means this is a firmer and more premium feeling device. There's pretty much nothing in terms of flexing or creaking in this laptop and how it's put together. And Dell uses that really sturdy hinge that they always do, meaning that the screen isn't gonna wobble when you're using it as a touchscreen. Another big change this time around is the keyboard, and I think this is where you're gonna get some divided opinions. I think everyone's gonna love the look of this new keyboard though. The font choice is a little bit lighter and more refined on the keycaps, and I really like how the keys stretch all the way to the edges of the keyboard deck. It's pretty reminiscent of the old 12-inch MacBook. Just visually, I really love how it looks like there's less wasted space on the keyboard deck, but it goes beyond just looks. The keyboard itself is larger, so it feels a little more comfortable and spacious to type on, and the layout itself is just great. Now, the controversial part is the actual typing experience itself, because the XPS 13 2-in-1 uses a butterfly style mechanism keyboard, which, if that sounds familiar, yep, this is very similar to the one that you get on MacBooks. And that comes with some problems and some controversies. Now, personally, I don't mind so much the really short travel or the kind of unique sound that typing on this keyboard makes. And I do like how kind of tight the keycaps feel and the switches feel. But I know that this is going to be a turnoff for a lot of people who are actually leaving the Mac world because of this very issue. And honestly, I gotta wonder if this was a good decision for Dell, because there's been a lot of rumors about Apple moving away from this type of keyboard because of all the reliability issues and just because of how a lot of people feel about it. So whether or not this is going to be a good choice in the long term, we'll have to wait and see. But let's talk about performance, because the XPS laptops have always been some of the fastest laptops in their particular class. And with the new 13 2-in-1, that has not changed at all. So what you're getting here is Intel's latest 10th gen Ice Lake processors. These are quad-core CPUs, brand new ones, and there's plenty of power and efficiency here for the average person. And even just in my use of it, I felt like things were very snappy, multitasking felt great. Not gonna do much in terms of heavier loads like video encoding or editing. I think you're still gonna run into some roadblocks there. But the one place where you're gonna see some significant improvements is graphics. Because this is Ice Lake, you're getting access to Intel's new Iris Plus integrated graphics. And because of the Core i7 version, you go all the way up to the G7 level, which is the highest level you can get for Iris Plus. And in general, these are still integrated graphics. You can't expect to load up your favorite, modern AAA game and just play things at 1080p in max settings or anything like that. But you are seeing performance that's around double of what the typical integrated graphics from Intel have been in the past. And that is impressive. I mean, that's just not something you could do on a laptop this size a year ago. I got Fortnite to run okay at around 35 frames per second when I turned the settings down to medium. In order to get up to 60, I had to lower the resolution. But it is possible to play Fortnite on this laptop. And that might not sound all that impressive, especially if you're coming from an actual gaming laptop with a dedicated graphics card. But again, that's not something a laptop this size could do just a year ago. So up to this point, you're probably thinking, wow, the XPS 13 2-in-1 is amazing. It's clearly a replacement for the normal XPS 13. Well, maybe, but there are a couple of compromises that I have to mention. And the first is with port selection. You're going down from 3 USB-C ports just down to 2, one on either side here, along with a micro SD card slot and a headphone jack. That's not terrible. It matches what you get on a MacBook Air, but I think a lot of people would have really preferred to have at least one more USB-C port there. The second thing to mention is battery life. The XPS 13 2-in-1 will still last you on average probably a full workday on a single charge, which is, that's kind of the standard for me. But if battery life is kind of the most important thing to you, going with the standard XPS 13 will get you probably around 2 hours more on the same workload, or even something like the HP Spectre X360 is really good in this realm also. The last thing to consider if you're trying to decide between the XPS 13 and the XPS 13 2-in-1 is price. Both of these laptops start at around $1,000, which comes with the Core i3 and 4 GB of RAM. That's not a configuration that a lot of people are going to be interested in. The problem with the pricing with this kind of goes up from there in terms of scaling, because this one that we reviewed here costs over $1,700, and that's quite a bit more than what you would be paying for the XPS 13. That's largely due to the graphics that you get with this laptop. You're gonna be paying a little bit more for those better integrated graphics. But I gotta say, when I put these two devices side by side, both are fantastic laptops. Both are totally worthy of your money. But I find myself coming back time and time again to the 2-in-1. And considering how much I've talked up the XPS 13, that's a pretty big deal. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. Obviously, I really like the XPS 13 2-in-1, but I'm curious what you guys think. Is this gonna be your next laptop, or do you prefer the XPS 13? Leave us a comment below, and make sure to subscribe for more videos from Digital Trends.